Tonight, we're going to start with a moment of reflection. We had a fair amount on our agenda tonight with 2 delegations and mostly new business. So we'll start tonight with a moment of reflection before we get into the rest of our agenda. All right, thank you very much. For the approval of the agendas, we have 2. One is our consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions on the consent agenda or anything they wish to pull from the consent agenda? Councillor Poitras?
Yeah, on the correspondence, C.1.B.C, this is a letter from Alberta Transportation. And so this was in regard to proposals for increasing speed limits on highways. They did ask for some feedback no later than December 12th. So I was just curious if what council's thoughts are. I know we've talked about this in the past, and so I was wondering if we wanted to send some formal correspondence about our thoughts on this.
Yeah, are you seeking to have that move then to a new business item, or are you suggesting? Sure. Yeah, okay, so we can pull that from consent agenda and add that onto the new business. Anything else on the consent agenda? There is a question regarding committee reports and how council would like to do that. I think on the regular agenda, Sean, if we can add a new business item and then we can reply to some of yours, if you wish, and then we can carry on with. We'll do that under the next portion of the agenda. Yeah, that's okay. So if there's nothing else on the consent agenda, there's currently no. There's a bunch of letters in there. There's some financials, some minutes from previous meetings. There is one submission for committee reports for Alberta Southwest. If there's no further comments, I believe the motion, is Councillor Poitras making a motion to approve the consent agenda while pulling the one item into new business? Is everyone clear on the motion? I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And for a regular meeting agenda, with the exception of one additional item already added, I think Councillor Poitras wishes to speak on some of his committee reports. And so we'd like to add that as a new business item. Is that all on the agenda? So a motion to approve the agenda with the 2 extra items. Councillor Patience makes the motion. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. And carrying on for the good of council. Does anyone have items they wish to share with the whole council regarding celebrations or highlights in our community over the last couple of weeks? Anyone prepared to make Councillor Poitras?
Yeah, so this is always a busy time of the year in town, and not this past weekend, but weekend before, we had our Midnight Madness and our Santa Claus Parade. And so big shout out to the Chamber of Commerce and the Santa Claus Parade Committee and all the many businesses and volunteers that put in a lot of effort to pull off that weekend. It was awesome. It was a little chilly, but the good resilient citizens of Fort Macleod came out in droves. And so it was an awesome weekend. So again, thank you very much to the volunteers that put that on. Like when Miranda puts together our weekend updates, it's just chock full of events and things that are going on in town. So too many for me to remember and list, but there are a couple things coming up at the Empress Theater, some free events coming on. December 12th, I believe, is the Christmas hymn celebration. So lots of choirs will be there. singing, performing, and it is free of charge. And then later on, I think it's the 19th, you'll have to correct me on my dates, is the nativity scene presentation at the Empress Theater as well. And so that's another great event, something to look forward to this holiday season.
Very good highlights, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Fox?
Also last week, we had the Sirens Parade. It was great to see so many people out waving to the fire trucks, and unfortunately, we didn't have any police cars available that evening. They were all busy. But there was a lot of people standing outside, and we raised, well, not raised, but collected a lot of donations for the food bank. And I believe it's still open at the detachment.
Yeah, that's still open at the detachment. Until the 12th, and then
Okay.
we'll contact FCSS.
Perfect. So if anybody else wants to donate, it's open at the police detachment. There was something else I forgot. Oh, this weekend, we had the second annual Harvey Barassa Memorial Bonspiel at the Curling Club with 21 teams registered. It was huge, it was busy, so that was fun.
Very good. I don't think we've had a council meeting since we went to Alberta Munis, correct? So that was good 3-4 weeks ago already, but we just wanted to highlight that. That was a good opportunity to network and connect in Calgary for a lot of new council members throughout the province. So yeah, a lot of new members of council being able to meet provincial counterparts. So that was good. I did also want to mention this Friday, yeah, been highlighted to give greetings on behalf of the town at a school celebration for their 100th gala. So that will be good. It's a big celebration for local business in town, so we want to congratulate them on that. Any other comments for the good of council?
Maybe just quickly, I just want to welcome members of our Environment Committee. They're here tonight to take in the Grassy Mountain presentation.
Very good, thank you. How did you do, Councillor Patience, on the parade? Was it a good?
I did good. Was advising Councillor Jamid on both of us trying to figure out how to drive the old fire truck and playing 21 questions with his son, which was fun. And yeah, we got through it all right, except we left a few councillors behind at the end of the parade. But it was good. Well attended. Always good time.
Very good, thank you. Any other comments for the good of council? Councillor Fox?
Last Friday, the Masons, I don't remember who all was involved in that, but the community Christmas dinner, they decided to give that a go again, and I believe they served roughly just over 400 people. So hopefully that's another annual event that they can do.
Yeah, that was not a small event, so that was very, very good to see. All right, if there's no other comments for the good of council, then we will continue on tonight with our delegations, of which we will start with our local Fort McLeod RCMP detachment, and our corporal, Chad Hurdle, will be speaking tonight. And we welcome you to council tonight and look forward to hearing some of the highlights for the last quarter.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me. I can attest to the parade was very cold. It took a while for my hands to be felt, but it was a good time. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these things. I just kind of looked through it and saw some highlights here for some increases in numbers. The one that I noticed that was a major increase for the fail to comply and breaches, it went up by 257%. And I would say that would be because what happened is we started keeping track of all the offenders that were released with conditions like curfews or things that we could enforce. And we would create an offender management file, and we were doing curfew checks on them nightly. If they weren't home, we breached them and we charged them. So that explains that increase, and it led to a lot of the local offenders being remanded, which in turn has sent the other numbers lower for our property crime. So that increase is a good increase because it's more charges under that. Another one that went up was roadside suspensions for alcohol and drug related. It went up 200% for one and 100% for the other. And I would say that's due to proactive policing and the fact that we are fully staffed and running with constables now. We've got 5 on the road. So before we had 2 under the field coaching program. Now everyone's trained. They're on their own. So we're allowed to spread out the manpower a little bit more. So that's a good increase there because that's proactive policing. As far as the staffing categories go, the only position that we currently have vacant is the sergeant role because Sergeant Lafleur promoted to Drumheller, so that's vacant. They posted the position laterally on December 3rd, so that'll close on Wednesday, probably the December 17th. So I reached out to district to find out if there is lateral interest, if the council's allowed to speak with the interested person, or if it goes promotional, they'll keep me in the loop and then I'll be able to let you guys know how that's going to proceed. Sirens of the Season, we tried to be involved in, but there was a ton of calls that got called away. I know we've got a whole box, like they have one of those bins that, what do you call it? The pumpkins are in, filled with toys. Our coffee room's filled with toys and clothing, and there's $370 cash to the side of that as well. So that'll all be donated. We tried the Candy Cane Check Stop again. We didn't run it last year because Victim Services switched to Sarvis, so we got FCSS involved to help us run it this year. So I said I would come in and see how that would go. So myself, FCSS, and the members working and Victim Services were there. And in 3 hours, in cash, we raised $1,216 on the street when we were out there for donations from the community. So the community had awesome support. And on top of that, we got more toys, food, and clothing to donate towards FCSS. And that should be the most of the stuff that I can cover unless you have questions. And then the other thing would be, we're almost to another year. So if we want to sit down and try to figure out policing priorities for next year or agendas, we should maybe get together and talk with council and everyone and see what we should focus on. We can set a date for that down the road.
Very good. Thank you for that. And for those priorities, are you thinking early next year?
Yeah, they'd be due by April 1st, so if we can, the sooner we can discuss any issues, changes, or things that you want us to focus on, the better it could be.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions from council regarding the quarterly report? Councilor Monteith?
Are the sheriffs still coming in and enforcing speed limits through town?
They are when available, but I've noticed I haven't seen them as frequently as in the past couple of months, so I'm gonna reach out because I've told them they're free to come through, especially on the one-ways, and enforce it as much as they can, because that's always going to be a problem for speeding.
Any other comments, questions? I did see some Facebook comments about the candy cane check stop, and that was, I think, appreciated. I think it was a kudos to the town of Fort Macleod, so thank you. I think that it's a positive thing rather than being a scary thing for a lot of people, right? So
Yeah, we literally just gave out candy canes, and then if they donated, if not, away they went. I know other places like Innisfil's been doing one for about 30 years, and they're getting 20 to 30 grand a year. So it'd be something, if we can keep it running, it's probably going to increase and give more back to the community. Because like I told everyone that came through, everything stays local. It's for your local FCSS.
okay.
So people were very appreciative. Had a lot of, I didn't know, and a lot of people went to the store and bought toys and came back.
Oh, so you didn't force them to give things?
Nope.
A little bit of manipulation. Any other comments, questions, new council members? Questions on for the RCMP on any of what they're doing in the community? Councilor Orr?
No questions, just thank you for that effort. Really appreciate that.
Okay, so I think, I know council is doing some planning early in the new year, so I think likely after that, or we can have a sit-down discussion on some of the priorities in the community. And I think it's good to get a two-way conversation too, on what you're seeing and how we can help, so that'll be good.
Yeah, because I think the priorities have been relatively the same for the
Yeah.
last little bit, but maybe something's changed that we should get together and see if there's more stuff for, or if Miranda, if you can do a community survey or something, see if there's any concerns, I'd be open
Yeah.
to that as well.
Yeah, overall, I think the priorities still ring true. Those are, I think, always top on the list. But very well. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming to council again, and wish you and your team the very best.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to everyone.
Thank you. All right. Next delegation we have tonight is we'd like to welcome back Northback for some updates on their mining operations in the Crozes Pass. So we'd like to welcome Mike Young to council. We look forward to hearing from you and asking any other questions, and we'll go from there. So the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for your time, and also to the environmental staff behind me, I assume, who have come tonight. And to my colleague Dana for coming along tonight as well. Look, Northback's ready to move forward with a revised Grassy Mountain steelmaking coal project that'll bring good-paying jobs to the Crozes Pass and local areas with high-demand Canadian resources. Alberta has another opportunity yet again to develop critical resources that the world needs. And Alberta has a strong record of powering and feeding the world. So it is a resource province. Alberta, we're excited to demonstrate how Northback can advance responsible mining and show the world that Alberta produces some of the highest quality steelmaking coal, supporting both Canada and the global economy while protecting water and lands of Alberta. The project will send high-quality Canadian coal to international markets. I'd love to be sending it to Hamilton so we can have truly Canadian-made steel, and then we'll see what we can do about that. While creating jobs, strengthening the local economy, and generating hundreds of millions of dollars in economic activity. A revised mine plan includes stronger water management, proven selenium technologies, and measures to reduce impacts on vegetation with a 40% reduced footprint, which has been shaped by local and Indigenous feedback. We're dedicated to designing the mine in a way that embraces environmental stewardship and aims to provide long-term economic advantage for the Crozes Pass, Fort Macleod, Pincher Creek, Brockett, Lethbridge, and other areas of Alberta. We'll just go through, oh, you've already gone it, jumping ahead. Yeah, you want me to go faster, do you? So the Grassy Mountain is a steel-making coal project. So not all coal can be used for steel making. It's a very specific subset of coal, and the coal that occurs in Western Canada is perfect for it. The annual production is going to be around 2.5 million tons per year. And we are owned by one of the largest mining companies in the world, Hancock Prospecting, who is an iron ore miner. And being an iron ore miner, and have been for 35 years, they understand the steel market very well, and that's why they acquired the Grassy Mountain project. So they've got very deep understanding of steel and the future need for coking coal. Coking coal is also known as hard coking coal, or HCC. Steel demand is growing. It's expected to grow to nearly 2.6 billion tons by 2050, most of that coming out of Asia and India. And the seaborne met coal demand will grow. So seaborne coal is basically coal that's mined and then shipped to the customers, so mainly coming out of Australia, the US, and Canada. Grassy Mountain will generate hundreds of jobs, and then there'll be indirect jobs as well. Multiplier effect in mining is generally around 3. And we're also expecting to generate hundreds of millions of dollars in various payments to government, notwithstanding the taxes that the employees will be paying. Next slide, please. So our parent company is called Hancock Prospecting, under the leadership of our executive chairman, Gina Reinhardt. She has grown it into one of the largest private company in Australia's history. It's a diversified company. It has iron ore, it has coal, it has beef, dairy. They're getting into garments and hats and boots. But in terms of beef, the company owns about 340,000 head of cattle on 24 cattle stations around Australia. So I extend an invitation to anyone in your area that if they're a farmer or a cattle farmer and they're heading to Australia and would like a tour, to just reach out to Dana and we'll arrange that. We have done that in the past. So, or if they want to go see the mine. They're also doing lithium and gas as well. and they have a prize-winning Wagyu. Next slide, thank you. So that's just a picture of Grassy Mountain looking to the southwest, so you can see some logging going on the other side of up Highway 40 in the background. Just showing you the shape that the mine's in today. So you've got the cliffs left over from the old mining, and you can see some of the coal seams in that photograph. Next slide, please. We're all pretty aware of where it is, 6 kilometers north of Blairmore in the Crow's Nest Pass. Next slide, thanks. And again, another photograph looking north. So that's the very north end of the old workings. It's as far north as we'll go. And again, you can see the coal seams dipping away to the west. Next slide. So the revised plan reduces the footprint by 40%. I'm not sure if you can see the red outline. I can't because I'm colorblind, and red's one of the colors I don't see very well. And you can see the difference in the footprint of the two operations. So the yellow one is the new operation, and importantly, at the north end, we've pulled back one of the waste dumps up there, so it's pulled right out of the Old Man watershed. We're not putting any rock piles into the Gold Creek watershed. It's a critical habitat. We've also reduced total rock movement significantly, so we're moving just over half of the rock that the old plan moved, with about 66% of the ore. And so what that's done is that's reduced the strip ratio, which is how much material you have to move to get a ton of ore. And so that strip ratio, by coming down, has improved the economics significantly. The other difference between this plan and the old plan is that we'll be returning much of the mined rock into the mined voids. So instead of having the entire pit operating as a whole and expanding it, we will start mining in the south end and move to the north, and that then allows you to have areas that are no longer being mined, that are pit voids, that you can then put a rock material, your waste material in. And that actually achieves a lot of good outcomes, which is it reduces the footprint, but it also is part of our selenium defense and selenium avoidance. So by putting the material back into these pit voids, we can reduce the amount of selenium that gets mobilized. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Next slide, thanks. In terms of economic benefits, there'll be about 600 jobs during peak construction, and then 300 to 400 jobs during the operation. As you know, there's a strong local support in the Crow's Nest. There was a vote there last year, about just over a year ago, where a strong majority, 72%, voted yes, and the voter turnout was about 54%, which is quite high. We also expect there to be a lot of economic benefit to these areas, particularly the towns along the Lethbridge, McLeod, Crow's Nest axis. These towns all have machine shops, metal workers, fabricators, they've got small service vehicles, things like that. So we believe there's a lot of benefit. And we do have a policy of hiring local. So we want to stay local, preferably in Alberta. And as an example, we've spent about $155 to $170 million on exploration since 2018. And then on top of that, of course, you've got the $20 million that we spent on the golf course, which I think has been a huge benefit to the region. So there's a really good article. I think I may have talked about this article before, called From the Bottom Up, in the Canadian Mining Journal. We'll make it available. I think there's a reference to it on the bottom of the slide. You can Google it. And this talks about how do you create a mine today. So what is a modern mining technique when you take into account how you're going to manage what we call constituents of concern, and how you're going to manage water quality. So the first thing you have to do is you have to think about these things before you start. So you have to start with a mine design that's going to achieve all these things before you get going. What you don't want to do is start a mine and suddenly go, oops, and then try and fix it. That doesn't work. So you want your modern mine design up front, and that means having your closure plan planned before you start. We call those landforms because they are. They're new landforms. And one of the things we do is we use layered lifts instead of just dumping ore like a scree slope, just tipping it over the side. You actually create waste dumps that have layered lifts in them. They'll have engineered covers, and what you're trying to do is prevent water and oxygen from getting into these waste dumps, because that's where the selenium gets generated. We call that source control. So the best way to avoid something or the best way to mitigate something is start with avoidance, and that's called source control. And that's about selective waste rock handling. So if you recall the photograph that was up there, there were light colored rocks and dark colored rocks. The darkest rocks, of course, were the coal. The other dark rocks are what we call marine sediments. This was all very shallow seas when the dinosaurs were walking around, and those darker rocks have selenium and the lighter rocks don't. So how you manage the waste rock, how you design the stockpiles, how you backfill, and progressive reclamation, which is a big part of the mine. Also with water diversion, you want to divert as much of the clean water as you can. So we'll have a footprint, a fence line, if you like, around the mine. We'll be responsible for all the water inside that. And so any water that's falling that you know is going to not intersect the mine workings, because the mine will start small and grow, you would want to divert that and basically leave it alone and let it get to the creeks. And then any water that comes into contact with any of the mine workings, and this is things like a footpath, a parking lot, a waste dump, the actual ore zones and roads, you would then collect that water, you would store it and test it, and if necessary, treat it before you release it. We have what's called a multiple lines of defense. So that means going with source control, going with your designs, and then the final defense is having an active water treatment plant from day one. An active treatment plant from day one. So there won't be any oops. Next slide, please. So this slide kind of repeats what I've just said, so I'll probably skip past it, but it really is a layered strategy, and that's what's really important. So we'll go to the next slide. The sites, I think you guys have all been to site? Not everyone?
Previous council, yes. We have two new council members that haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll get that sorted out in June. The snow melts.
I recognize this.
Although, looking at the ski season we're having, I don't know if it'll melt by June. So. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Next slide, thanks. So water management. So we've kind of taken a page out of the irrigation handbook, and so we're not going to be drawing water from creeks or rivers. What we plan to do is collect it on site and then store it. So the collection would obviously take place during the freshet and during periods of high precipitation. We would have a storage pond, and then we could use that water during the year without having to draw any water from the creeks. So it's akin to how irrigation uses the Old Man Reservoir or dams on the St. Mary's River, same sort of concept. Coal processing is a process which is inherently recycles water. Coal is slightly heavier than wood, doesn't quite float in water, so what you do is you use magnetite in the water to make it a little bit more dense, and then the coal will literally float off and all the rock particles will sink. And so magnetite is an inert substance. You can just screen it out using magnets. And so there is no chemicals involved, and because of that, we won't need a tailings dam. So that material, the rock that is rejected, we'll use that in sort of the construction of the waste dumps, and we can also co-dispose it with the waste. But importantly, there's no waste dump, no tailings dam. So when you think of the oil sands, they have massive tailings dams. We don't have that. As I said, the water will come from precipitation and also from mine watering. So as the mine gets deeper, we'll start intersecting the groundwater table, and that dewatered mine will make up part of the mine water. Next slide, thanks. We do run tours all summer, provided the fire danger is not too high. They've been very, very popular all year. We've had hundreds of people on the tours. And everyone from people who are strongly supportive, neutral, to not supportive, their view towards the project changes positively almost across the board. From going up and having a look at site, and well, you guys experienced it, so you sort of have a fair idea. Next slide, thanks. So reclamation is a very important part. As I said, you plan that from the beginning. Alberta requires reclamation on all lands required by all industrial activities. Our operations are no different, and we will be partaking in the Mining Financial Security Program. So basically that's a government program where They determine the disturbance footprint, they make an estimate of how much it'll cost to reclimate it, and then you basically have to park that money and put it aside. So one of the benefits of having progressive reclamation is that instead of at the end of your mine life having this massive liability that you have to clean up, by progressively reclamating, you're reducing that liability, so it makes economic sense. And it also makes environmental sense because the sooner that you can basically reclimate and cap those waste rock dumps, you're actually preventing the water from getting into them and returning the land to a more natural state. Now, as you know, the land up there isn't very natural at the moment. And part of the reclamation will be seeking feedback from the local communities because sure, you could just put soil back and grow trees, but you've got this opportunity with all this equipment to sort of, do you build recreation sites? A lot of reclaimed mines are actually golf courses, swimming holes, fishing, wetlands, mountain bike tracks. There's some iron ore mines in Minnesota that are awesome mountain bike tracks. And so you've got an opportunity to sort of build something there that's sustainable. Next slide, please. Our parent company does have a good history of reclamation. They've won several awards. These are some reclamation sites from around BC and Alberta. So you've got top left, Brenda Mine, and EVR. Top right is a project at Syncrude. The bottom left, if you've gone to Canmore, that's Quarry Lake. That's an old coal mine. Canmore being a very, very large coal mining town. And then on the right, the Stewart Creek Golf Course. And if you've put your golf ball into any of the lakes there, you can blame the miners because those lakes, again, are reclaimed coal mine. The other thing about Canmore, it was a big underground operation. And so they spent 5 years mapping out the old workings and filling what they could with cement so they could build houses on top of it. So almost everywhere you go just north of the south of the Bow River is an old mine. It's pretty cool. Well, to a geologist, it's cool. The rail loadout facility on Highway 3. So in that image there, you can see Highway 3 on the bottom. Going up from center right to the top is the golf course road, going up to that new golf course. And so the train will come in, it'll come off the main line over near what's called Ironstone, halfway to Coleman. It'll go under the highway, we'll build an underpass, and then it'll come into a figure eight. Now, the way that trains are loaded in any facility like this is CPKC will bring the train in. I can't remember how many cars will be. Train loading will be 2 or 3 times a week. And so the facility's not operating all the time. So the train comes in, those train drivers get off, they go to the local hotel, and then our guys take over and we remotely drive the train underneath the loading facility, and the train is always moving. So once the first car starts loading, the entire train keeps moving at about 1 or 2 miles an hour, and the coal is then loaded into the cars. I've never seen a coal loadout facility yet that is dusty because the coal is wet. The coal is about 9% moisture, and that's basically to reduce dust, to reduce any fire hazard in the hold of a ship, and actually to make the material sticky because bulk material like iron ore and coal and things like that can shift in a ship. So the coal is quite moist. The train then loads up, and then when the train's full, the crew gets back on, and then they take it to Vancouver for shipping. We've made some changes to the design in response to, could you go back one slide? Sorry. If you look on the top right of the figure eight, there's a loading facility is below grade. So we've moved the tower that loads the trains into an area of that train loadout where we've had to cut into the hill. And so that's below grade. And so that reduces noise and dust at that point. So that's significant. And then on the next slide, you can see by building berms and trees, those are the views from Highway 3 on the top, and then the view from the golf course road with Powder Keg in the background in the bottom left, and then on the right, that's Turtle Mountain in the background, just to orient you. So that's not a solar panel, that's a water dam for water collection. You can see the train. So from an amenity point of view, it's pretty benign. We will, paint the towers and the infrastructure green and blue and try and get it to blend in. So a lot of work's been gone into improving that. And then last slide, this is up near the Big Show, which is part of the tour. It's an old winding machine that was used when they did some underground exploration up there, and that's part of the heritage that we're very keen to preserve. So one thing I'm very keen to do is work with Fred Bradley with the Heritage Group to try and develop whether they're walkways or pathways to show new mining versus old mining. There's a lot of mining history up there that needs to be saved, and pretty keen. The other thing that has, thank you, Dana. The other thing that has happened recently is that the draft terms of reference have been released, so you may have seen them in your local newspaper, and are a lot of groups of concern have publicized it quite widely, which is fantastic, doing the work for us, love it. So the terms of reference is part of the normal application process. It's a pro forma that comes down off the AER website. We modify it for coal. It's predominantly for oil mining, sand mining. And that is our proposed table of contents for the environmental impact assessment. And the environmental impact assessment forms the bulk of the application. And so we say to the AER, this is what we propose we're going to study. It's very comprehensive. And then the public get to have a look at it, and they can make suggestions and ask questions and say, well, I'd like it if you could study this, and you're missing this. So it's a great opportunity for the public to get involved, and I strongly encourage people to do that. And then that gets finalized by the AER. We have been doing a lot of the work on that list already for the last several years. But then we go away, we complete the application, we then submit it, and then that's made public, and that's the chance when the public will actually see the full science behind what we're doing. And I think that's open now for comments, so I invite all of your constituents to do that, to have a look at it and make comment. So finally, I just want to say that there are people who want to frame the discussion about Grassy as a for and against, or an us and them. And I think that's wrong. I mean, as much as I'd like your undying support, I think it's unfair to ask that. So what I am asking is that you support the process, the regulatory process. Let us show you and your constituents our plans to protect the environment and provide benefit to Southern Alberta, and then you can make an informed decision. And I believe, once you see the plans, that you will support it. But the ask is support that process. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you on behalf of our council for coming again. I know you don't need to, but it's always good to be able to understand what is happening upriver from Fort McLeod and the impacts that may have to our community. Can you comment a little bit on where, and you did a little bit on that, but where the whole, what's the process now? Terms of reference are out, what happens next? Like,
So
when
the
does
terms of reference will be finalized probably January, February, and then that sets us off into completing the environmental impact assessment, and that's a body of work. Can't give you exact dates on when that would be finished. We've got a calendar that we're working towards. Most of what we're working on is on schedule. Some's ahead of schedule, a little bit's behind schedule. The current drill program that's going on the mountain, that should finish up around the 20th. So we've got rigs up there collecting more data that was specific to these studies. So we're not trying to extend the breadth of the ore zone. We already know where it ends, and we already know where the pit boundaries will be. But some of this data will enhance the designs to reduce some of the impacts. So that'll feed into the study, and then that'll start informing things like how do the waste dumps get designed, how much water do we expect to have to treat, and all of that. So there's a lot of work to do, but we would hope to be submitting that in 26. Then what happens is that's then made available to the public, and then the public are able to put in statements of concern or statements of support. And then we address those. The AER may determine that we need to do a bit more work. Those are called supplementary information requests. And then you may go through a round of those. Our goal, though, is to do as good a job as we possibly can up front to reduce the number of supplementary information requests we get, because that slows the process down. So we would hope to be producing coal by 2030. That's kind of what we're aiming for.
Okay, very good. And any other questions from council? Councillor Patience?
Yeah, so you were suggesting or asking that council not support the project or show neither here nor, or positive nor negative support for the project, but more for the process. So is this an internally designed process, or is this AER's process, or where does that process
Oh, yeah.
derive from?
Great question. Sorry, I was ambiguous. It is the AER process, so it's the regulatory process. Love it if you supported the project. But as I said, you haven't seen it yet. So it is asking to support the AER process. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Councillor Ward, did you have a question?
First, I'd like to say thank you again for coming. I'm one of the new councillors, or new to this term. Just a couple of observations, and I know the process is going forward, and really appreciate the amount of effort that's been made. I happened to be on council not the last term, but the term previous to that, and we had a presentation at that time. And I would have to say that the work that's been done in this presentation and the work that's been done since then has addressed many of the issues that we see individuals protesting against. That wasn't really addressed in the first presentation. And I can only conclude from that holding the company's feet to the fire has actually produced some results that I'm glad have been taken. Your discussion about reclamation, about selenium, dealing with those kinds of issues are all issues that I'm grateful to see that you are addressing to the degree that you can. A question, and it's more for me to just get a sense for your parent company. I've recently spent some time in Africa, and I'm curious to know whether or not Murdoch Prospecting has done any work in Africa.
Hancock Prospecting?
Hancock Prospecting?
You know what? I don't know, I'm afraid
Okay.
to say. I didn't come from Hancock, so I was hired by Hancock in Australia to come over. So I
Okay.
never worked inside the organization in Perth. I'm not, I won't say I'm not, I am not aware, but I don't know, and we'll find out for you. They do have a geothermal project that they own part of in Germany. So normally what Hancock does is they'll take a minority position in a company. They normally don't invest until the project's been de-risked. And so they're currently in a lithium brine geothermal company in Germany, which, you know, there's a lot of opportunity for that in Alberta, geothermal and lithium brines. They are looking at other projects around the world, particularly in the copper space, because copper is going to be a very sought after mineral with all the build out of renewables that we're looking at. They do gas in Western Australia, but I don't know of any projects offhand in Africa, but we'll
And it might seem like an out there question, but I was just curious if they did. In many countries in Africa, it's what we might refer to as the Wild West in terms of business and business ethics. And I was just curious whether they had entered that realm and whether there were some references to how they would handle themselves there. So again, if you have some info on that you could provide at some point, that would be great. Just one other question.
Sorry, can I will make a comment on that because it's a really valid point that you make. The Australian Securities Investment Commission, which oversees corporations in Australia, we have very strict rules on facilitation payments and other Wild West type activities. And so I'm not defending Hancock in any way. I'm just talking, I used to run public companies and we did look at whether we should be in Africa, and I had a lot of other colleagues who were working in Africa. And so we, in Australia, the public companies particularly, and also private companies through ASIC, are heavily monitored and feet to the fire. So there's no one I know that's, behaving in that manner.
Thank you. Then if I may, just one other question. I was impressed by the diversification, the number of different industries that your organizations are involved with. And I'm just curious, is there any, let me look at my notes, any investment in green type technology outside of maximizing your efficiencies and greenness in the industries that you're in?
So Australia has some of the, strictest emission
Yep.
rules in the world, and so there's an obligation on companies to reduce emissions, and Hancock is certainly at the forefront of some of the technology on that, particularly with batteries and remote and autonomous vehicles. So they're looking at, by maximizing and optimizing vehicle movements, you inherently reduce greenhouse gases. And so they are certainly in that space, and they're also investing in lithium and some of the other critical metals in the green energy space.
Thanks for those answers. Appreciate it.
Very good. Any other thoughts, questions, comments, Councillor Purchase?
Yeah, just a quick question. You mentioned your terms of reference are up for review now. If the public does want to review those and provide feedback, where do they go for that? Is there on
There's
the
a link on
AR
our
website?
website. Yep.
On
there's
your
a-
website?
On our website,
Okay.
and also the AER. I would go to our website, and then they submit those to the AER, and then we receive copies of them, but the AER makes a determination.
Okay. Thank you.
One quick question I had, I think you suggested 2.5 million tons per year. How many years would that be operational?
So construction would be about 2 years, and then we'd have a ramp-up period, and so the mine life would be about 25 years.
25? Okay. Any other thoughts, questions? So about 50 million tons of material.
A bit more,
Okay.
around that.
Very
Yeah.
good. Well, if there's no other questions, we want to thank you for coming to council tonight, presenting, and we know how to get a hold of you if there's
You
any
do.
other questions or comments. And yeah, we look forward to seeing some of the terms of reference and the process carry through.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Fader, maybe I have one more question. It's
Sure.
more a curiosity. And when you were going through the stuff about water, and you were suggesting that you were not going to draw water out of a river or creek, but you were going to collect precipitation on site. So and I'm not a professional at this by any stretch. There might be some people in the audience that are far more versed at this than I. But I know the headwaters of the Oldman is not a large area. So while you might not be diverting water from the old or from that watershed directly, what impact, or do you know this, what impact will be the collection of water from that particular area of the basin? How much will it reduce water going into the river system currently?
So as I said previously, we're working through new mine plans, and that'll determine the final water allocation. But what I will say is the old plan was about 600,000 cubic meters, which is about 450 acre feet of water allocation, which is 3/4 sections under irrigation. So the amount of, and then when you look at the Old Man Reservoir, I think it's 495,000 decaliters. So it's a big, big reservoir. And so the impact on the reservoir would be barely measurable.
Oh, very good. Does that answer your question? If there's no other questions, again, thank you for coming to council tonight.
My
and,
pleasure. It
wish you
is
luck.
not a chore.
Okay, very good. Appreciate that. All right, thank you very much. And we are going to move right into new business tonight, of which we have a development permit on land that is zone direct control. And so we'll ask our planner to introduce this application to us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Mayor and Council. This evening, we have for your consideration application 100-25. This is a direct control development application to get into the next phases of the Crocus Coulee Ranch Limited gravel pit. The original gravel pit started some time ago with further expansion in 2019 that made the first phase of this development 45 acres or so. During that time, a lot of the conditions that are before you were worked out with the applicant and are being furthered into today. One of those having to do with its mining operation connection to the roadway that is in MD of Willow Creek. You'll see in your package that the MD of Willow Creek is asking that their heavy haul agreement be updated to capture this current application. Beyond that, this is what we consider a Class 1 pit. And then Class 1 pits are anything above 12.5 acres. And as such, it falls under the regulation of the province. And the province has, in their submittal, signed off on the application. They have the required dollars they need for reclamation. And even though there is a change on phasing, they say that phasing is in relation to the current engineering, and they are okay with that proposal. The phasing diagram, just to give you my quick synopsis, in the engineering, phases 2 and 3 are now being called phase 2. And it doesn't have a lot of ramifications. Part of the applicant's desire was to have the phasing avoid the residential site as long as possible and phasing around it until finally they need to mine next to the residential site. The land use bylaw was updated this past year in 2025. During that process with council, it was the request of the landowner that this be zone direct control and that they come with the application to you. Council accepted that, and that's how the land use bylaw is now written. Within that direct control, there are certain uses, the uses that are permitted and uses that are discretionary. The pit itself falls under the discretionary, mainly for the purposes of circulation and discussion with Willow Creek, as they are impacted by as I said, the road connection. The conditions this evening, as I said, are very much mimicking what was done for the first phase. And in those, you'll find that there is, under the land use bylaw and mentioned in here, under condition 10, that excessive wind speed in the area should be considered when extracting aggregate, and the operations need to deal with that, specifically from Schedule 5, Section 12.4. That wind speed is 50 kilometers, right there, yeah, 50 kilometers an hour sustained. So I know that there's concern over a lot of the wind-blown dust that's happened. A lot of that over the summer, I think you would have known, is coming from the highway pit, as they did not slow down their pitter operations. I don't know how to say this, one shovel full of gravel at all. They just kept moving and crushing. So it is something that the Development Authority does have to monitor with the applicant and make sure that during those windy days, we're making sure we shut the operation down. Okay, the applicants are here. The staff recommendation this evening is in your top of your document that council approve phase 2 to extend the current gravel extraction pit south to include phase 2, which is 38.3 acres additional to the phase 1. Extracting sand and gravel. The hours of operation are 7 to 7 with intermittent crushing and screening. There is no washing to be allowed. 10 to 25 haul trucks per day. A water truck will be utilized on high haul days for dust on the proposed haul routes. Within the application, you find the following conditions numbered 1 through 11 and the informative that explains the changes in the phasing If you have any further questions, I'd happy to answer those. The applicants are here and may wish to provide further comment.
Thank you very much. Applicant, would you like to speak to the application at all?
Hello. Just some information we would like to pass on to you. Just for those like David and Sean who are more new to the council, so you're kind of up to date on what goes on. This isn't, of course, a new application. You can see that we're just moving into phase 2. So the town of Fort Macleod and ORRSC revised and changed the bylaws last year on a few parcels of land within the town limits. We met with Gavin, Kelly, Anthony, and Brandon a few times to be clear on what was being asked or changed within our quarter of land. And we came to the agreement that our entire quarter be under direct control, not just the gravel extraction. So that's for our class 1 gravel extraction. We were told it would make things easier for everyone involved, as everyone knew through these meetings that we at Crocus Coulee Ranch had to move on to the next phase 2 of our gravel extraction. So for phase 2, phase 1 has been reclaimed and confirmed by the Alberta Environment representatives. There have been no previous concerns or issues arise from our phase 1 from adjacent landowners. All documents from our engineer, Dennis Twerdoff, have been sent to Kelly and Gavin and are in place. We've paid our development permit for phase 2. Our reclamation security is in place for phase 2 through a letter of credit held and confirmed by the Alberta Environment. Other documentation that was required and sent out by Kelly pertains to the development permit received from the following: MD of Willow Creek, AEP with Brent Armstrong, AHS Robert Rippon, ATEC with Leah Olson. There's been no concerns from any of these agencies, no concerns with phase 2 from any adjacent landowners. I don't know if you need to have any questions, or if you have some, please ask.
Very good. Well, thank you for that. And so the recommendation from our staff is to approve with the conditions listed. I would at this time, I believe, ask for a motion from council so that we can discuss the application. You prepared to make the motion as for the recommendation, Councillor Monteith? Move, okay. All right, so this is, if anyone has any questions on direct control too, it doesn't happen too often for a council. There's not too many properties that are direct control. I know we did have one a couple months ago in town, but this I believe is the only one outside of town. Yeah, if anyone has any questions on the purpose of direct control, we can always address those outside of the meeting. But regarding this specific application, does anyone have any comments, questions regarding the recommendations? Councillor Patience?
Thanks, Mayor Fader. I'm just curious, where do the gravel trucks from the pit go? And I'm looking for like the route. Do they head north?
No, they come south to the Lasco asphalt plant. They come south, see that where it says phase 2 and there's a haul road?
Yes.
Yeah, it comes right down, and then lower in that map, that's Lasco's asphalt plant. That's where the scale is.
And
That's our
where
haul
from
road.
there, Janine?
Sorry? Oh, and after that, then Lasco has a road that follows down into where you guys tried to get the police college that time, and then it hits the MD road, and then they go to the highway past Johnny Van Driesten's.
So that is the road on the south part of the police college property? So my curiosity is if that road gets paved at some point because of development on those properties, then how do those road agreements manage that?
Yeah, so we have, I guess prior to your election, we've had some conversations in the intermunicipal development plan meetings with the MD of Pincher, or MD of Willow Creek, I'm switching communities, MD of Willow Creek, and we've discussed not only that road, but also the road north-south here on the east side of this project. And the MD at this time is fine with the maintenance as is. We did indicate that, yes, even up the existing north-south road, that as development comes online, those conversations need to reoccur. And at some point, there will be a triggering point where the MD will say, okay, now it's time for you guys to take that over. Those conversations, though, of course, are ongoing. So I think that's something to bring back to an IDP meeting and see where they stand when the phases come along online. Now, they did sign off in this case, again, with the whole agreement as is, so they didn't have any concerns. But certainly as the parcels of land are developed, old college land, if that ever takes off, I think there is a point where, yes, there needs to be an agreement that the town does take over the maintenance of those roads.
I guess, Gavin, what I'm trying to get at is, I haven't read through the road agreements, but do they cover,
There is a heavy haul road agreement on that south road
but is
currently.
it just for gravel or is it for an upgraded road? And I guess that's my curiosity, I'm just thinking long-term here.
Yeah. I don't know that it mentions asphalt. I think asphalt's never been talked about in those situations, so it would only deal with the current condition of the road and how that road is maintained.
If I may provide you with more information, when we applied for our Class 1, Phase 1 gravel extraction 5 years ago with Adrian, Kelly, Gavin, they told us at that time we would have to give or sign over to the town 2.4 acres of our land to the south boundary for future development of a service road in order to receive our Phase 1 development permit. This land was needed by the town for future highway twinning and the bypass service road future development. We did not receive any compensation for these 2.4 acres that we gave to the town. As the price of land has not gone down and the land prices aren't cheap these days, that was out of our pocket. This option was our only option to receive our permit put forth by the town of Fort Macleod at that time. Also, if you're discussing the LASCO, I don't know if you've heard, but that asphalt plant is for sale. We have a potential buyer who we would partner with who is interested in purchasing the Lethbridge asphalt plant adjacent to our quarter to the south. We could then operate the same as we have in the past 5 years. Would make sense to continually have the gravel extraction right beside this soon-to-be operational asphalt plant. Also, for where the asphalt plant is, I don't know how many acres they have. Is it 16 or? 30, yeah. Is it 30? Okay, so then that southwest 6925. I spoke to Anthony in the spring about this, but the town's been for sale for a few years, and there's a potential buyer that we've been in contact with for that piece of land, but he's been a head supervisor on the pipeline through BC, and he just got home 3 weeks ago, so he's still reviewing that option.
Theo Burdette, do you have any other comments on the heavy haul agreements? We can get you that information, but there are heavy haul agreements. We just have to.
Well, my
Pick
only,
it back
my,
up.
my concern just was, if they're designed for a gravel road and that road gets upgraded, do those agreements still stand and how are they impacted? That's really my curiosity.
Oh, yes, that paper was provided by the MD. It's probably in your 150 pages that you guys got.
Yeah, and just to speak to some of the road conditions, I know with gravel roads and with oiled roads, the heavy haul agreements are of utmost importance because the use on those roads will wear the roads down a lot more. At the point in which this road, if this, this whole, I guess, 320 acres gets developed out and we are looking at large industrial scale, that road would be paved as a heavy haul road. And then under asphalt, well, yes, there would be, general wear and tear. It doesn't have the same effect if the road is built to that standard as, our highways are, because these trucks go from that road to the highways, And so at all of the truck routes, you know, you build a road that can handle it more. So I'm not familiar with many heavy haul agreements that are for asphalted roads that are built to withstand the weights of industrial level trucking.
So I think the question that arises, and again, this is looking long-term, is who's going to pay for that road, that upgraded road? I hear Councillor Patience, that being the question. Is it, as this develops, this area develops more, and eventually we'll need a paved road sufficient to satisfy the needs of the businesses there, will that be left to us with no recourse to the various businesses that might be, that would own that land?
Yeah, at this point, we wouldn't have an agreement in place that they would need to be building that road. But yeah, I mean, I guess it would depend on how much development happens down there. And if we had a developer that was looking to develop a number of acreages and lots, you know, that could be part of that development agreement. But one business, what I think can happen too, it kind of creeps up on you, right? Because if it's just one business, we wouldn't see that road needs to be upgraded for their continuing gravel plant. Probably not for one more business, but as they slowly tick up, I could see the concern that, you know, eventually the town would be the one who'd have to do the road, but that might just be the reality of it. Without doing the whole thing as a project, that might be the reality that eventually we see the need for an asphalted road.
Very good. Any other questions from council regarding the application? Councillor Fox?
Just looking at the heavy haul agreement here that's in the package, it's only referencing Range Road 255. With the MD, it's not actually talking about Township 90. I know, like, I travel that road quite often as well, and Lasco made a mess of it. So I'm just concerned about kind of the wear and tear with that many trucks operating again.
Township 255 you're referring to? That road? Or you're referring to the gravel
on
road?
the Range Road, the actual gravel road. Or not the Range Road, sorry, the Township 90.
Okay, they never hauled gravel on that road. They only would come out of asphalt, like their asphalt plant goes south, hit whatever that is, 90?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
the
then come
one
up the
I'm
highway.
talking about, that
Okay.
one. They made pretty good ruts coming out of there and stuff a
Right.
lot of the times.
And that would be under their heavy haul agreement to repair that.
Any other questions regarding the motion and the recommendations attached to said motion? Councillor Orr?
Just a comment, just for transparency as to why I would vote the way that I do. I appreciate the effort that's been made. It looks as though you've met all of the stated requirements and you have the support from the necessary entities. You answered one of the questions that I had as to whether or not there's been any concerns in the past with your phase one in terms of mitigation with wind and with dust, and there's been no complaints from what you've said. And so those factors weigh in your favor in terms of my vote.
Yes.
Thanks.
I have a question. Does anyone know if Lethbridge Asphalt has a heavy hauler agreement with the town?
Well, that road is an NMD road as well.
To the south?
Yes, the south is ours, sorry, I thought you were talking about the east, or the north-south one. I don't know the answer to that question.
Just curious.
So motion's on the floor. Is there any other questions or discussion, debates? Seeing none, I will call the motion to question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. We will move on now to bylaw 2012, and we'll ask, as soon as he gets to his desk, Brennan Orr to present final draft of the bylaw 2012, which is a water utility services bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the recommendation is that bylaw 2012, being the bylaw of the town of Fort Macleod in the province of Alberta, known as the Water Utilities Services Bylaw, for the purpose of regulating the water utilities within the town of Fort Macleod, is hereby given first reading, and then further scheduling a public hearing for January 12th, 2026 at 7 p.m. So this is the water utility bylaw that we've talked about and had some discussions on, some details. So the proposal at this time is to help to maintain inflationary costs in 2026, while we further investigate the fairness of water use versus the cost burden, water conservation through consumption rates, and those considerations. Bylaw 2012 is being updated throughout the document with changes to the text, as well as financial updates in Schedule A from Bylaw 1990. So the financial implications, let's see, so this would be rate changes just for 2026. Residential water consumption rates increase 3%. Non-residential water consumption rates increase 6%. And then out of the town water consumption rates out of town water consumption rates increased to double the residential rate, which in this case would be the value there, the 2.06 per meter cubed. Administrative fees have also been updated as discussed and are highlighted in Schedule A. So if there's if there's any questions, we can answer those.
Okay, the request is to first reading of bylaw 2012, along with a public hearing scheduled for January 12th. Anyone prepared to make the motion? Councillor Fox will make the motion. Any questions for administration for first reading? I think we had some preliminary discussion. Councillor Poitras.
Yeah, so I know that we've had discussions about our out-of-town water users quite a bit, and I believe that we have communicated with them these proposed rate changes. Is that correct?
So this is the proposed rate change that we've discussed with one of the out-of-town users. So this hasn't been finalized, and that was part of the agreement that we were building with them.
Okay. And what sort of feedback have we gotten?
So that agreement, at least on that part, was agreed to. So we were moving forward. We haven't finalized that contract. But if you look at that again, that the 2.06 is still about half of what our bulk water rate is. So having that as the other alternative, that was agreed to.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. So first reading, I think my question would be, how will this bylaw change be advertised? I don't think it so much impacts our local residents. That's, I would say, a pretty minor change. I'm just wondering, the biggest change will be the out-of-town ones, and I'm assuming, like you said, one of the out-of-town has been notified already. I think it's important we just have pretty open conversation about that, or transparency. Yep, CEO Brett.
So we did take a look at some example bills to see, what this kind of change looks like. And of a standard sized home, they're looking about probably a $4 increase a month. A family of 4. So we wanted to see kind of what that would look like. So, $48 throughout the year, roughly, right? We can't know exactly, but we wanted to kind of see what generally we're looking at for a change for residents. And yeah, so I think reasonable. And I think this does get us in the right direction of what the goals that we're, a step in the right direction for the objectives that I think administration and council are trying to achieve.
Very good. If I may ask, I think the spreadsheet that we had is a bit of a working document. I think it would be good to see that as well, just what the overall impact will be for the community. I think that would be good to have. But otherwise, any other discussion for based on the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Something similar with bylaw 2013, our sewer utility service, and we'll ask our Director of Operations to introduce this one as well.
Thank you. As you had said, this will be very similar, and we'll go through some of the details, but the recommendation is that bylaw 2013, being the bylaw of the town of Fort Macleod in the province of Alberta for the purpose of respecting the management and regulation of sewers within the town of Fort Macleod, is hereby given first reading, further scheduling a public hearing for January 12th, 2026. The proposal is to maintain, again, the inflationary costs in 2026 while we further, we might have to look at this. So this will actually be for the sewer one. We will be moving into a more annual rate increase. Sorry, that was my mistake on that. So we are looking through, for bylaw 2013 has been reformatted and updated with financial updates to Schedule B from the bylaw 1990. So what we're looking for in the sewer, and I think I messed up that too. I think that's supposed to still be Schedule A. So Schedule A, sewer flat rates would be an increase of 2% in 2026. And this will be applied on an annual basis moving forward so that there is a consistent increase on the sewer rates. So that's the proposal, is a 2% for 2026 and then 2% in the following years.
Very well. Anyone prepared to make a motion as per the recommendation? Councillor Fox makes the motion. Bylaw 2013 sewer utility services recommendation is for a 2% increase year over year. Anyone have any questions for administration? Debate or discussion? Councillor Monteith.
Does this mean we're locked into 2%?
So that would be the recommendation, that we have that consistent increase year over year.
Would we be looking at it annually? Because, for example, if inflation was 8%, if we're doing 2%, we're going to soon be out of whack. So I'm just wondering if we're going to look at this and determine that 2% is still reasonable, or whether we need to look at something different.
I think that, I guess the thought was that right now we have no increase, and so we're consistently falling behind. So if we have that 2%, and yes, we can revisit that, and if we want to make any changes, then we have that in place. But that would be, I guess, the base, that instead of having it just sit, and then if we do make changes, that could be a more one step, a larger impact. So by having these small rate changes, then yes, that gives us an opportunity to look at that. If it's out of whack, then of course we can look at that bylaw again.
Yeah, I think to Councillor Monteith's point, I think it's no different than, say, when we review our Fortis and ADCO franchise fee. It's done every year. We review it. It's a quick discussion motion. I'd hate to also forget about it. I'd rather have it be on our agenda at least once a year for a review of the rates. And if the recommendation every year is 2%, then fine. But I don't think it would be healthy to have it built in for a 2% increase year over year without it coming to council. I think it's an easy discussion, so why not have it once a year at least? CEO Burdette.
I guess the only comment I'd make to that point is, while I do think it is needful to review from time to time, just if we wanted to do like a couple of years, just because it is a bylaw. And the one part where we will be able to review it is when we do the operational budget. You know, if you do see costs increasing faster than you see the revenue increasing, you'll be able to see that on the operational budget, right? Because we're trying to break even in the wastewater services. So all of a sudden, if we see, hey, we're not covering, then we can review it then. But perhaps a happy medium with, set 2% for a couple of years, or if council is keen on doing a new bylaw every year on the water, or adjusting an amendment to schedule, there are options, but
Yeah, I'm thinking that just the schedule would be modified, right? It doesn't have to be a whole new bylaw. If that's an option, but yeah, I prefer not a whole new bylaw. That's a lot of extra work. Yeah. Either way, the motion's on the floor. If council or administration has some feedback on that, then we can consider that second and third reading. If there's no further discussion or debate, then we'll call it the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Our year-to-date operational report, and we'll ask our Director of Finance, Chris Holbeck, to highlight.
Thank you, Mayor Fader. Good evening, Council. Tonight, I'm presenting the year-to-date 2025 operational report. I like to do this quarterly for Council. Sometimes I'm late. Obviously, I'm a little late this year with the election. And this is probably the last time you guys are going to see it before the audit. You will see it next when it has been audited and the auditors bring the financial statements, or there's a little bit of a gap. I did put some comments throughout this document for Council, anything I thought was interesting or might be a item that Council would have a question on, so hopefully it was completed enough for Council. I don't want to go through it page by page, obviously. I would take all and any questions, and I will premise your questions with no, I do not know what our surplus will be by the time the auditors is done with this. So I'm just going to say that to the mayor right now. Thank you.
And we're accepting as information, correct? It's nothing that we're approving or...
No, accepting it as information is great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So perhaps I'll request a motion from council to accept the operational report as information, and we can have some Q&A and discussion there. Councillor Poitras makes the motion to accept the operational report as information. Does anyone have any questions regarding the operational report information to date? Councillor Monteith.
2 questions. You talk about with the utilities that there's only a bill coming in December, but shouldn't there be 2 bills, December and January, that are included in there? And also, can you explain how the solar is shown? We're showing the excess, I believe. Can you tell us what's reflected in terms of reducing the electrical bill?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Merriman. Thank you, Mayor Monteith. Mayor Monteith. Oh, that was good. All right, thank you, Councillor Monteith. For utility bills, our audit period is January to December. So the January bill is for December and the December bill is for November. So that is our timeline. There's always a month that's off on either end, but it's been like that since we started running the utilities, and that's our year. So it is one more bill. Jerry Joe runs it on Wednesday, and it is for November, but it's billed in December. So that's how we run our utilities. For solar generation credits, I will let Brendan speak to that and the CAO.
Yeah, so I can speak a little bit to that. So we have been doing some research on how our solar project is working and how that's operating. We have had a company that's come in and has been doing some studies and doing some background for us. We've also checked that against our bills. So we do have a preliminary report on how that is producing. And as you said, the production goes directly into the consumption of the building. The only credit that we see from the utility is when that production exceeds what they're actually using at the plant. So that's why that number is fairly small. What we're trying to do is break that down so that we have, and I am anticipating to bring that in front of council. We have the actual numbers of what that looks like and what we are saving. It's not directly transferable just because we're looking at, we're recording it in the amount of power that it's producing. And so to transfer that to money is dependent on what the actual payments are and what that standard is. So we're trying to make that and to actually see in our bills, and that's what we need to confirm, is that our bills were this high, now we're taking off this much power, so now they've reduced. So I still need to verify and make sure that we're getting that out of our utility. So I know that that's kind of a non-answer, but we are looking into that, and we do have some preliminary reports on how that is working.
So is the electricity that we use there just doesn't show in our statements? It's not like we're charging that department for and then showing revenue elsewhere that we're recovering because we own the solar?
If I'm understanding you right, it's just cost savings. Yeah, so it's used automatically. We should be seeing from the utility whatever's above and beyond the solar, then that's what we'll be billed towards.
Any other questions or comments on the report? Looks very well done. Councillor Patience.
Chris, I see several of these as I went through that report. And I'm looking under administration expense right now, and you can probably clear this up easy. Like workers' compensation, it says 0 was budgeted, but our actual was $25,000, and I know there's probably a bookkeeping thing for that, but I'm curious. There's a couple others as I go through that the same way. Repairs and maintenance office equipment. I think you got a note on that, but I'm just curious why there was no budget number for workers' comp.
So workman's compensation for my budgeting purposes is one of our benefits that we pay for our workers, and I allocate that out to the departments at the end of the year. So that amount in our admin budget is just a holding account, and then before the auditors get a hold of this, I push it out to all departments. So it's one of my year-end adjustments. So it's just in there holding, and then it gets separated out on a percentage basis to all departments. So it'll be gone before you know it. Yeah, and you'll see also up in salaries for admin support, there's a $72,500 budget for it, and we're at about 150. That's because I push out admin support to departments too, but I do that at the end of the year when I know what our full wages are and what percentage I need to push out to each department. So it's a little bit of a administrative thing that I do at the end of the year to kind of do full costing in each department for what they use from administration. So it's a little bit, it's not perfect, obviously. So we work on it every year. We try to tighten up our payroll system so it automatically does those kind of calculations, but we haven't gotten there yet.
So I sort of expected there was an admin technique that you were using on that. Would the same apply then for standby for public works, where I see a budget of 21 but nothing allocated to date? Yeah, public works is standby. I think it was new this year for our budgeting purposes, so I don't think payroll has quite worked out how to automatically get that over into that account yet. But you'll see in other departments, facilities and plants, their standby goes automatically over there. So for this year, it will be an adjustment, a physical adjustment that I do at the end of the year. But hopefully in 2026, payroll will have that automated for all of us. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
I just have one more. Actually, probably got a couple more, sorry. But my note things on here actually worked this time. So, yeah. So, Chris, an amortization for the arena and curling rink, the budget amount was 58 and it went up to 130. Was there a particular reason for that significant increase in the amortization? Was that construction that took place, or? No, it's just an estimate that I do for Councillor Monteith because he likes to see amortization. So I do an estimate every month, and then I don't really, I guess, take a real hard look at my report and see how much has been estimated. So I make it work after this report. Like for when the auditors come, it'll be actually factual. It won't be Chris estimating, rounding up to tens of thousands of dollars and not really taking a hard look at what's in each department. So my apologies.
That all, Councillor Patience? You're good? That's okay. All right, if there is no other comments or questions, motion is on the floor to accept as information. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
And moving on to 2026 provisional operating budgets. And again, we'll ask our Director of Finance to introduce this to us.
Thank you again, Mayor Fader. So council has seen this document, not this type of version of it, the more complicated line by line item version. This is the version that I consolidate and make into a Word document and make things into general categories like wages, general supplies, contracted services, amortization. Most of the departments have very generic subcategories for this report. But council has seen all the detail at both infrastructure and finance and committee of the whole meetings, and we've gone through it in detail. So this is just the Word document that we provide for the final provisional budget document, and something for the public to view and to read and to kind of get an understanding of where the 2026 budget is going. I did put some comments in. I thought they were the highlights in most of the departments. And then I did the final page with the summary and the adjustments in and out from reserves to get us to our zero balance. And we can go into that page in detail because I'd like to go over it in detail with council. But if council has questions regarding any of the departmental stuff, I would be happy to answer any questions on the 2026 provisional budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone prepared to make a motion on the provisional budget? Councilor Orr makes the motion to approve the 2026 provisional budget. Is that correct? Any questions for administration on the 2026 provisional budget? Councilor Monteith?
For some reason, I'm focusing on sewage and water, but are those budgets taking into account the increases we just approved?
No, those increases will be shown in the final budget in the spring, Jim.
Okay, and those materials are way higher than we budgeted before and way higher than we had last year. I was just wondering if there's a reason. And also on garbage, looks like you've incorporated a rate increase, but the revenue doesn't change much. So I'm just wondering about that.
Are you looking at water, Jim?
Sewage, I think I was looking at. Now I've lost it. Yeah, the materials, we budgeted 434 and 25. Year to date's 333, we're budgeting 503. So I'm just wondering.
Brennan will help you.
So when I was talking to the guys at plants, we do have certain chemicals that we bring in that last certain amounts of time. So there are adjustments to take into account. So if I'm remembering correctly, we did have a discussion on that, and there will be a higher cost for the shipping and bringing in those chemicals. So that's where that's coming from.
I was going to make a maybe recommendation. I don't know that I would be healthy putting the 2025 year to date in, because I think that would be pretty, there's a lot of explaining that I think we would need to do if that's left in there in its current format and kind of stage of where it's at. I think it'd be confusing. That is my personal thought, especially if you go to the bottom line.
Yeah, and we can actually, if council wants me to remove that, I can just, it's pretty easy to remove that column from the report if council so chooses, or we can leave it in for this year and do that in 2027.
If it's easy to take it out, I think it might be helpful, because I think currently it would be, it's pretty hard to see what's going on with the year-to-dates, but that's my opinion. Councillor Monteith,
Are we talking about what council gets or what goes to the public?
public.
Okay, because I would hate to see that disappear, what comes to council.
Yo, for sure. But I think council understands and has explanations on it, but this one would leave, unless we're gonna do a lot of explaining, I think a $4.2 million surplus would be a hard one to try to figure out, because there's no kind of budget year to date on the last page. So that's my thought.
Yeah, and I can take it out. I think probably the public gets more concerned when it's the final budget and the mill rates are involved in the discussion, but I think it's probably, I mean, it's nice to see for taxation because all of taxation is recorded. But for those departments that have missing expenses, it doesn't really compare very well. It does raise a lot of questions that don't probably, you know, they should be answered, but, you know, maybe they're not, you know, furthering the conversation by muddying the waters, I guess. But I can remove that column for sure.
Councillor Orr?
I'm looking at the bylaw enforcement summary operating budget. And just for the record, I wondered if you could just explain or expand upon the variance highlight where you speak to the police funding contract, that it will be that it is a downloaded cost from the government of Alberta, and then when you speak of it, that it will be a separate line item on the property assessment and taxation notices. If you could just amplify that some.
So maybe as council knows, I don't know exactly all the history, but I think it's been 7 years now that we've been requisitioned by the province of Alberta to pay our portion of police funding. For the province of Alberta, they have a big spreadsheet. They talk about a crime index, your population. I don't know, there's a bunch of factors that go into their spreadsheet. And then they determine what policing cost in the province, and then they allocate it out to each of the municipalities. So we pay that contract amount every year, and it started out at, I think 7 years ago, it was about $55,000, and then it went up to 90, and then it was like 150, and now we're at 190, and we haven't really, they said they're gonna hold it for this year. So I'm budgeting the same amount as we budgeted 26 and 25. But what we've seen in other communities is they actually have a line item on their tax, their assessment and taxation notice that go out to the public. And there's an actual line item that says police funding. And that amount that we pay, $190,000, a mill rate gets attached to it, and everybody pays a certain percentage of that. It's really, the town just pays it, but these communities are showing it on taxation notices as an additional cost to ratepayers. So we, I can bring one to council, maybe to strategic planning or infrastructure and finance, but in my home community, Claresholm, we actually have a line item that talks about police funding and what portion of our taxes are paying for police funding for the province. So I guess it's a question if we want to do that. I've brought it up with prior councils, and they were like, oh, that'd probably be good information for the public to know just how much of their tax dollars are going to pay for policing. So I guess that's something that we can, I shouldn't have probably worded it quite as forcefully as I did in the report. But yeah, that's something for council to talk about and consider.
Thank you for that explanation, and for those who are watching, that perhaps is a clarification when they actually get that, assuming that we put that separate line in the 26 tax assessment. Thank you.
Very well. Any other questions on the provisional operating budget for 2026? Again, we'll stress it's provisional. It's something that we're not 100% locked into, but it allows the town to keep the lights on and keep paying bills. And Chris, did you have another comment?
Miranda, can you just go to the final page of that report, please? I just want to go through one thing that Councillor Patience brought up at the last, I think, Infrastructure and Finance Committee of the Whole meeting, can't remember, but I just was like a deer in the headlights when he asked the question. So I just wanted to clarify. So on the final page of that report is my reconciliation of what's in our operating budget and how we get to a zero balance budget. So you'll see at the top for 2026, we start with a deficit, and I changed your parentheses and got it straight for you, Councillor Monteith. So thank you for that. So we start with a deficit. We add back amortization because amortization is a non-cash item. It takes us to a surplus of about $1,080,000. Then we take out our debenture principal payments because those aren't showing in our report, only our interest shows on that report. So we take out all of our debenture principal repayments, and that takes us down to about a $477,000 surplus. So we're still surplusing. So now the transfers to and from reserves to operations, in and out of operations comes down to it. So the first one is FCSS reserve. In the main document, they are estimating a deficit. FCSS has a reserve. So if they're running a deficit, we pull from their reserve at the end of the year to zero them out. So that's just how that first line works. The second one is our transfer into capital reserves, and this is the annual 10th Street Infrastructure Rehabilitation Project. So that goes into reserves, and we put it into the capital reserve that has been kind of accumulating funding for the 10th Street project, or whatever council decides it's for in the future. It's just in a reserve, and it's earmarked. It's just kind of earmarked. It's not, nothing's, council decides on anything that happens with reserves. So then I'm gonna skip the next one, the 535, and I'm gonna go down to the $25,000. So that is our $25,000 that we put into a reserve for the GR Davis repairs and maintenance. Every year we put $25,000 into a reserve for when this building needs something and we have to put in our 50%. So we are I think we're in year 6 of it. I can't quite remember. I think we're in yeah, there it is. So we've accumulated some money in it, and it helps out when the LRSD says we're doing this, we need to do this. Do you have your money ready? We say, yes, we have some money. The next one is the $1.6 million, and that is the surplus from the main report from land sales. So any surplus from land sales gets moved out of the picture. It's a surplus in the report, and it gets moved into a reserve. So it's a nil effect on mill rates. So it's a surplus and it gets pushed into a reserve. So it's an in and an out. So that's where the surplus from land sales goes. It goes straight into a reserve. It's not a land sale reserve. It just goes into like internal financing. It just kind of goes into general funding reserve. So I'm going to go back up to that $535,000 that comes out of reserves into operating. So what that is that's the total amount of our 2 development loans for principal and interest. So when Councillor Patience asked me how we were funding the principal and interest on development loans, and he didn't want it to be affecting taxpayers, it doesn't, because the surplus goes into the reserve, and then the portion of that that's paying for the principal and interest comes back out. So it's a nil effect on the mill rate. It doesn't affect the mill rate at all. So I just wanted to clarify that because I had I had to think about it, and I wanted to be quite clear when I explained it to you guys. So the second last one is it's coming out of capital reserves into operating, and that's what we have to pay. That's the amount that we have not got any money for the Highway 3 18th Street signalization project that's in our operating budget. So that's up the $1.2 million. That's an expense in our operating budget for that project. that's the amount we have to find in our reserves to pay for that and to push it over to operating to pay for it. And then the final one that gets us, that we do the adjustment for, is a repayment to the internal financing reserve for the Southwest Industrial Project Phase 1. We are in this would be for year 4 of 25. We have a bylaw that said we have to repay that reserve for the 50% of the project that we borrowed from that reserve. So it's a 25-year repayment term, and we pay back to the reserve $52,000 a year. So I just want to explain each of those things because it looks like Chris is doing a shell game with in and out of transfers, but I want to explain it very clearly so council understands how we get from almost $1 million deficit to a balanced budget. And it comes from doing some adjustments that we do for non-cash items, and it comes from us moving money to and from our savings account, which are our reserves, which are fully funded. So we have about $10 million in investments right now, and our reserves are fully funded because we have I think our reserve balance is, no, that's next year. I think our reserve balances were about $5.5 million, so we should have $5.5 million funding those reserves, and we have about $10 million currently in investments. So I just want to, I don't know, that's probably way too much information for this meeting, but I just thought I'd talk about it. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna have to cut off your mic. No, I'm kidding. Any questions further on the provisional operating budget, Councillor Patience?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I appreciate the explanation. Is there a reason we don't set up a separate land sale reserve? And the reason I ask is because we're about to come into a capital budget where I'm seeing money from land sales going into infrastructure projects in the municipality, and I just, the little guy in my head tells me that's real bad practice. So typically in land sale reserve, land sales go in there, those funds are utilized to pay down the debenture over time. Typical process. So I'm seeing money being shuffled around from reserve to reserve, and it makes me very uncomfortable. That's why I asked the question in the first place.
So from my perspective, we don't, when we have a surplus, in prior years when we had a surplus, we would, most of the time, we would allocate it to any of the capital reserves that we knew were going to be short for the next capital funding year. So that's kind of how we decided at year end, what kind of a surplus do we have? We allocated it to the reserves that were going to need it for the capital budget that was being passed for the next year. And then any other amounts, we had an internal financing reserve, we called it, and that's where a lot of the surplus was moved to. So it was called internal financing. So we do have a land sales reserve account, but we've never earmarked the profit from the land sales minus the interest in the debenture part of it into that specific reserve and locked it in there. I don't know why we haven't. I'm unsure. We have one. We could do that if council so wishes, and that's a council decision. But of course that reduces the town's flexibility if it wants to do something. But I mean, council controls the reserve. So if you guys want to move reserves and take something from a land sale reserve and move it into a capital project, multi-year project, capital project, we bring that to council and we say, okay, if this is what you want to do, this is what we have in there. If you want to move $2 or $10 million out of this reserve into that reserve and earmark it for this project, that all comes from council. We can't do that internally. We can give you guidance, but I mean, that's a council decision. If you want to take any kind of profit, like for this year, when we finally figure out what our profit is for land sales, if you direct administration to take whatever that profit is, less any debenture principal and interest payments that had to be taken out of that profit, and move it into the land sale reserve and lock it in there for whatever you decide you want to use that land sale reserve for in the future, then we will do that, absolutely. Like, but that's a council decision that we would follow.
Yeah, I wasn't really so much concerned about profit. I was concerned about the actual coverage of the debenture and the interests. So if we borrowed $5 million to build 50 lots, and then we sold all the lots for $5 million, but we move it over and we invested in the 29th Street project and redo all that for $5 million, there's no money left to pay that debenture down. That's my concern. It's very simple, right? But you're absolutely correct. We can shuffle by motion reserve accounts. I've worked in municipalities with 300 reserve accounts, like crazy number, like far too many, honestly. But 30 to 40, something like that. And the reason I think it's important is because it can't be moved without a council motion. If it's allocated to repay a debt for a land development, that's what it's for. And unless council moves so, that money stays in there for that particular purpose. So that it's not being tax funded down the line. And that's my concern. It's still my concern, by the way. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, thank you. So any questions regarding the operational budget as a whole, Councillor Patience? No? Councillor Ward? Nothing. So the motion is on the floor to approve the 2026 operational provisional operating budget as presented. Any further questions or debates? Seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. I was going to mention, like, if we, it may be good to bring to council at a future date an update on our, I think there's a lot of questions on our reserve accounts. So it may be good that we do bring our reserve account status and policy to a future council meeting for discussion, because we do have a policy on that as well. Okay, 2026 capital budget. We will ask our Director of Operations and Director of Finance to speak to the capital budget.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the recommendation is that Council approves the 2026 capital budget as presented. I have put in some additional documentation to make this, I guess, the discussions and some of the comments about the different projects so that that can be clear, and some more details on what's going on in there. So maybe just looking at the executive summary for 2026 capital budget. The costs as per the departments and their breakdown, our projects are broken down into facilities, plants, public works, and then fleet and equipment. And then it has a chart there showing the total amounts for 2026. There is a high-level breakdown for facilities, the large projects, the arena floor, the 150 park, landscaping, irrigation and lights, McLeod Landing, green spaces, and then some of the smaller projects there. The plants, the large project would be the portable genset and the transfer switch. In public works, the large projects, and again with public works, they are large projects. The annual sidewalk that we spoke of, the asphalt gravel upgrades, and the wastewater relining program. So again, those have been put back in so that that's an annual cost and annual projects. The 10th Street and 16th Street, looking at those and working with engineering to make sure of those projects, their feasibility, and making them shelf ready. McLeod Landing Phase 3 to start, and that would include our expectation to do the engineering, finalize that, and there's a bunch more documents in here under this section that we can talk more about McLeod Landing, but that would get us into that point and then start on some of the actual construction, depending on schedule and the plans, moving that into the 2026 year as well. And then the 4th Ave and 22nd Street stormwater upgrades, and that was deferred from the 2025. With the fleet and equipment, the large project would be the public works loader and the upgrade to that, as well as the cost in with the trade-in. Grants and reserves, looking at that, you can see just the breakdown, just a high-level breakdown of where those grants and reserves are. And we talked a little bit about the grants, and there has been some money building up in some of those grants. So we're looking to continue to use those and take advantage of that opportunity to help to improve the assets in our community. And so there is a description about the grants, as well as debentures, which we're looking to help to finance the McLeod Landing Phase 3. And then it does go into a breakdown to each of the projects. And we have talked about these, so I'm not sure if we want to go deep into the details in there, but I did want to make sure that, especially with the public works, that as we had talked about, there are some changes there where we had taken out some amounts for the sidewalk replacement and the asphalt overlay programs, which are annual programs. So those numbers have been put in 2026, they were put back. And then in 2027, as discussed, those are the amounts, instead of being a part of the 16th Street project, that's been taken out. And so the full amount or expectation for that 16th Street project is in the 2027 value there. So yeah, I guess if there's any questions or comments, then we can look at the details in each of those areas. And also just, I know there was questions about McLeod Landing Phase 3, so we can also dive into some of the design and the schedule and those kinds of things for McLeod Landing as questions come.
Very good. So some of the components of the capital budget, I think we could pull out if we needed to, right? But the request right now is to approve the 2026 capital budget as presented. That's your recommendation.
Yes.
Okay. So regarding, it's a pretty big discussion on some of the options for McLeod Landing. I'm just not sure exactly how to handle that one right now. Councillor or CEO Burdette?
If I can get through this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the options weren't necessarily to be decided upon this evening at all. But just given the amount of questions that we had concerning McLeod Landing, we wanted to kind of demonstrate where we are with the current plan and the current area structure plan to see the potential revenues from sales against the cost of Phase 3. And so the cost of Phase 3 is estimated at 2.8 million. And then you can see from our current plan, the estimated prices for the residential lots and the senior center lot come in at about 3 million. We did receive the appraisal back for the senior center parcel, and it actually came in higher than my estimate, which was the first, but it came in at 1.2 million. And so that is comparables to the area. If council eventually goes the route where this becomes, let's say, another Pioneer Lodge, for example, we probably wouldn't see that sale amount, but if it was like a commercial for-profit, or there are a few scenarios where the land sale could be materialized. But we just wanted to demonstrate that, as is the new additional cost for McLeod Landing Phase 3 will be covered off by the additional revenue for McLeod Landing Phase 3. And then just to get your brain thinking about the potential changes, we did want to include a few maps there that allows us to potentially leverage some of the infrastructure that we're putting in there to get, for example, either 4 additional lots or 7 additional lots, whatever. Personally, my favorite is option 2, but it allows us to increase the amount of revenue up front and also increase the future property taxes that we would receive. Because in the scenario where that 4.8 to 4.5 acres becomes a seniors facility, let's say like the lodge, we actually don't get property taxes. It fills a very important need in our community, but there is no property tax.
Unless it's private.
Unless it's private, for sure, yeah.
For private.
Yeah, but if that, exactly, there is one scenario where there's no property tax and it's a very important need, but the costs are still there, and so that is a much bigger, I guess, contribution by the town. So if we look at options where we, squirrel away just a few more lots, and we'll, like I said, that decision doesn't have to be made tonight. These are just ideas for council to start thinking if we want to make an adjustment to the area structure plan as we move forward with McLeod Landing. So either way, the revenues of this phase alone do cover the additional expenses. Obviously, the infrastructure that's in place already, those costs, right, the stormwater is already in place, and so there are costs that will be allocated to phase 3 that have already been expended for stormwater and the development of the rest of the area, but all the additional costs would be covered. And then Brennan did include some of the actual plans there from the engineers, so there's some more specific information as far as the development of that area. But yeah, we just wanted to get that out for you guys so you had a little more information on McLeod Landing Phase 3. Because in our previous discussion, it seemed the majority of councillors were pretty eager to get that project rolling. And Brennan's been working with MPE to see how quickly that can proceed. And so we wanted to make sure you had the information in front of you that you needed to accept it.
Oh, very good, thank you. I know there was some thought about smaller lots. Has that been looked at as well, potentially?
It has not been explored.
Okay. So I think, I think that may be something worth looking at. The only thing is we don't have back alleys, so I think the smaller the lot gives, it's a little bit harder to make that work because they don't have a lot of rear access for potential garages in the back as well, right? So that is all part of the discussion. How did you, want to do that? When would you need the feedback from council on that? You wouldn't need it tonight, but you would need it by when?
We don't have a set date on that exactly. We would, I guess if we had like at our planning meeting, perhaps, if we take a further look at it and see what, maybe not a formal motion to change the ASP at that point, but some direction from council, then we could talk to the engineers on making some small adjustments. If at that point council's like, actually, we like it how it is, then there's really no adjustments to be made to the ASP and the engineered drawings. So yeah, probably look at that at our council planning session.
Okay, so let's go back to the original recommendation is to approve the 2026 capital budget as presented. Is anyone prepared to make a motion on the 2026 capital budget as presented? Councillor Poitras makes the motion. Any further discussion or questions for administration? Councillor Patience?
Yeah, sorry. I know we have to pass this tonight. I actually thought we had another council meeting this month for some reason, but so obviously we have to pass this budget this evening since we're required by MGA to pass a capital and operating budget prior to January 1st. I would like us to revisit this capital budget very early in the new year, in January. I have really no comfort level with the capital budget, and I apologize, and it's not that Brandon hasn't done his best at it. I have no idea where the municipal reserves sit after all these expenditures, and that leaves me wanting. I know we're carrying about 5 billion in reserves, but I'm looking at very big numbers over the next couple of years. 8 million next year, 7 million 2 years after that. So I'm concerned about the reserve amounts and how we're funding these and what that looks like at the end of the day. It's just so we're not cash strapping ourselves in the future, if that makes sense. So and I spoke briefly with Chris before the meeting to see if somehow this could be worked to just show what the impact of the capital budget is on those specific reserve accounts, taking into consideration annual allocations from the operating budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly fair request, and I think that we've already asked for that to be put on the agenda for early in the new year to review our reserves. A lot of these have been on previous council's radar for the last 2 or 3 years. So a lot of these aren't popping up all of a sudden. They are something that's been worked on for the last few years. So I think though looking at the reserve accounts would be, either way, it's good to do and analyze where that's at. In terms of the motion that's on the floor, is there any other questions regarding the specifics of the capital budget? And regarding what's being planned, Director Chris Holbeck?
So I just would like to point out to council that, I don't know if it is this page, the summary with red. So the red reserves are the ones that are in deficit position. So we need to bring to council early in the new year, the continuity for our reserves, where they started in 25, what we paid in capital projects, what we're gonna push in from surplus, where it's all gonna be allocated to each of the reserves. And then that starts 2026, and then we have our estimate of 2026 capital budget items. But these are, right now I'm estimating at the end of 2025, those 4 reserves are gonna be in a deficit position. So, or they're going to be in a deficit position based on the 2026 capital. So when we do talk about reserves and capital budget, we're gonna have to do some reallocation between reserves and some allocation of surplus to specific reserves to get those reserve amounts up to a balance where they can fund the 2026 capital amounts. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions, comments, debates?
I'm not intending to be a pain on this. It's not the way I'm used to seeing it, so I'm a little uncomfortable with it. And when we saw this draft last, for instance, in 2027, it showed, I believe it showed like over 4.4 million in LGFF. That's now been reduced to 860. So it's got me asking the question, where did those funds now be switched to, right? So I don't think it's an unreasonable request, and I think it would make the rest of council feel comfortable knowing, oh, at least we'll still have this to move forward with, right? And
Yeah.
And I'm looking to the future as well as today. And I understand I'm certainly not trying to quash projects, but I want to make sure we can actually afford them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no concerns. All right, so the motion's on the floor. Concerns have been notified or noticed. We'll have some further discussions on our reserve accounts. If there's no further discussion, I will call the motion to question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on then to our library budget. We have a presentation from our Director of Community and Protective Services.
Good evening, Council. Every year we bring forward from the Library Board their approved budget for the next upcoming year. The Alberta Government application for financial assistance requires that Council reviews and approves the Public Library Board's budget. So that's why we are here tonight. It is in front of you, both the revenue and expense side there. It's on 2 separate sheets. Councillor Fox sits on this board, and I am sure if there's any questions about the specifics of it, that she could kind of lead the discussion in that a little bit. There's nothing really completely different from the year before. It's very, very similar, and in my review of it, I haven't seen anything that really stands out to me, but again, I'll let Councillor Fox talk to that a little bit if Council has any questions.
All right, anyone prepared to make a motion as per the recommendation? Councillor Patel. Motion to approve the 2026 Public Library Board budget as presented. Any questions on the budget? Councillor Monteith.
Where does the allocation from the local foundation come into this? And where does that money go?
So the Library Society contributions, is that what you're talking about? So on line 2 there, on the income side, So we don't actually see those funds per se, so we have it down there as 22,000 as their contribution. But because of their, I guess the way it is with the society, it's easier for them to purchase books, magazines, stuff like that, and then donate those to the library. So they're actually spending those funds themselves, and we're just getting the product.
The only thing that worries me about that is we're fooling ourselves because you're banking on the books and this and that, and that's paying for. But if that was not available, then the operation of the library would be really impacted.
Any other discussion or questions? I believe we are required to approve this budget, correct, as part of our responsibilities for the library. And motion is on the floor. If there's no further discussion or questions, we'll call the motion to question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. We had the additional item from Alberta Transportation. Councillor Poitras requested this pulled from the consent agenda. It's a request for feedback from the province regarding their survey and request for feedback on increasing speed limits on our divided rural highways. And I know anyone in the province can submit a survey response, so I think we can encourage anyone to do that. But if council, I think they've asked us if we have any official response, we can submit one via email as well. So does council want to take an official position on this, that we support the increasing of these speed limits? And if so, then we can direct administration to fill out the survey accordingly. So is that a motion somebody wants to make, or do we want to have a discussion? I know the deadline's coming up quick. Is that your motion, Councillor Poitras?
Well, yeah, I guess the question was more, like, do we want to put forward an official position? Or I believe CAO Burdette, you said that you did fill out the survey already. Would that be enough for council?
Yeah, like I think I have personally, I don't know if Anthony did it on behalf of the town, but
Just personally filled it out as
yeah,
a
so if we wanted
Albertan.
to do it as a community, we could do that. But I think then we would probably email, so it's registered from our community. Councillor Monteith?
The problem with council deciding on whether we like this or not, it's the same with the coal mine. Are we speaking for ourselves or are we speaking for the town? And I don't feel comfortable speaking for the town because I don't know how they feel about it. I know how I feel about it, but I don't want to, I don't think it's our responsibility, 7 people, to come up with what our town of 3,700 thinks of this issue, or coal mining for that matter. So I'm a little hesitant to do it from a town perspective.
And I think that's kind of the tentative decision we had on it when it came up previous in some of our group chats. If we want to promote it and encourage people to fill in the survey, that's, I think, reasonable because the province is requesting. But I think they've received substantial feedback already, and sounds like it's quite overwhelming support of increasing the speed limit. So I'm not sure how that will be looked at. So I don't know that we need to right now. Like, I know we've had some safety concerns with the amount of traffic going over Granham, and the risk that poses to people taking that shortcut because Google says it's shorter. So would this change that? It might shrink that time by a couple minutes. So yeah, it's a bit of a hard one. So unless council has a motion to make, we can encourage people to fill in the online survey. So no. Yeah, Councillor Ward?
Just a question. I'm looking at the letter. And can someone provide some clarification as to will it impact the highway coming into Lethbridge or into McLeod? It's got divided portions of Highway 3 and then Highway 4 from Lethbridge to the United States.
Yeah, I think
Can I read that to
under the-
include the highways that are coming in and out of Fort McLeod?
Yeah, under the third bullet, Highway 3, approximate 80 kilometers would be approximate distance from here to Tabor or somewhere in that. I think it's farther to Tabor, but I'm not sure. It's an approximate distance. And then the other one would be Highway 2, so between Edmonton and Calgary and south. So approximately 400 kilometers.
Okay. So the only reason why, we as a town may have some, statement to make here is if we feel there's going to be a decrease or an increase in traffic coming through our community. But again, I don't know that we have enough information to be able to judge that, to take a position on behalf of the town. And so I would also be in favor of leaving it to our citizens to speak to it.
Very good. Councillor Butchers, you good with that discussion?
Yeah, sounds great.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to the last item was Councillor Patience asked for a bit of an opportunity to speak to committee reports, and we can have some discussion on this at our annual retreat too, if we want to take a little bit more time to highlight some of the activities on our council committees. And when we do that, we've been in the habit of submitting minutes and feedback and putting it in the consent agenda and passing along to admin. But if we want to be more vocal around the table at council meetings, we can do that as well. Councillor Patience?
Thanks, Mayor Fader, and I apologize. I wasn't sure what the process was, but I just thought probably appropriate and nothing that's major. Well, there's a couple things that are actually sort of important. So November 5th, Councillor Jamit and I sit on the Built Heritage Advisory Board. We reviewed 2 applications, one for a temporary cover for a elevated patio in the alley behind Main Street, and one for additional development on the rear of the Queen's Hotel. And we worked with Fraser Shaw and passed comments on to Kelly, since that board has no real authority. All we can do is comment, right? On MPC, we actually approved application for an industrial subdivision realignment just east of 3rd Avenue, just on the north side of the railroad. This is existing industrial lands. It's just a realignment. We also approved an industrial subdivision for the town of Fort McLeod, west of Highway 2, on the east end of the horse pastures. It's about 13 to 14 acres, something like that. We approved the 150 park, but we did deny an application for a duplex development because of multiple variance requests. On the Waste Management Board, we had an organizational meeting. We reviewed our draft budget. We got a very new manager there, so we're having to work with her in terms of what we'd like to see as far as a board presentation goes. We had an adjacent landowner in complaining about blowing garbage, and of course after that huge wind, that's not a big surprise probably. And in terms of the text I sent you all, that presentation from waste to energy firm Varme is on December 18th, and yes, Jim apparently is my alternate. It's been moved to 1 p.m. at the Willow Creek MD office. So Anthony, the request was myself, the alternate, and the CEO if they'd like. And apparently now Cardston and Cardston County would like to attend as well. So I feel like we're starting over. I'm not sure, but at least the conversation continues, right? 18. And then we'll hold our regular meeting afterwards, so we can't carpool, but nonetheless, it's not too far away. I took an EOEP course on assessment on the 26th of November, Environment Committee November 26th as well, discussing goals for 2026. They're very interested in the River Valley Park, and that was not my push, that's their push. They're still curious about the disposition of the paved path. They're reviewing their terms of reference to make suggestions to our legislative services staff. They're planning for mulch for the urban garden in the spring, and discussed options for the old ice cream shop lands. And I know there's more than one probably group looking at that, and that's something we can discuss with Brendan as we move forward. And we had another BHAB meeting last week, December 3rd, and really discussed the removal of the airport hall and the old ice cream shop. That was really the content of the meeting, was very short, so it didn't cost very much. But December 4th, last Thursday, we did have a ORSC organizational meeting with all the new representatives, chose new executive, and approved our 2026 budget. And for Chris, and I know that our development officer isn't here, there was a number of amendments to fees that were made at that, as far as the 2026 budget were concerned, and not the least of which was a 14% increase in membership fees for ORSC, as well as some subdivision fee increases, etc. I do expect ORSC to send out a memo to all municipalities, but I thought I would give Chris a heads up. Yeah, and that was all, and I appreciate everyone indulging that.
Thank you for those updates. Did anyone have any questions for council patients on those? I think on the Councillor Monteith.
They actually came and made a presentation to us about 2 months ago about this, so we were aware it was coming in.
And then, yeah, no, that's good. I think always on the MPC, if there's any feedback that you have on what we may or may not need to do on land use bylaw, if there's any changes or edits, then it's good feedback always to see the why behind some of the challenges for sure. All right, if that is all, then I will request a motion from council to go in camera for an in-camera session.
Mayor Frater, our first in-camera session, we'll need to, someone would like to remove themselves before we go in camera so that it can be recorded, and then they'll come back in and we'll have to go back in.
Let it be noted in the minutes that Councillor Patel is excusing himself from an in-camera discussion regarding the first agenda item. I'll request motion, Councillor Fox, to go in camera, so we'll call a motion to go in camera. Call the question, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.